Okay, welcome to the final video and conclusion of the Expanse PC build. I told you guys in the last one that the next time you see it, it will be done. So that's gonna be the point in today's video. We're gonna finish this off. Don't know how long it's gonna be. It's gonna probably take several days, to be honest. But we got some serious progress, and I want to get this done once and for all. The Air 903 Max mid-tower case from Montech features a 51% porosity ventilation rate, pre-installed HP 140mm ARGB fans, and 21 built-in RGB modes for a premium feel without the premium price. Not interested in RGB? Then the Air 903 base is just for you with its clean aesthetic and incredible component support at a price that won't have you crying. To see the full list of Air 903 specs from Montech, follow the link in the description below. Okay, so what I'm working on right now is the front. This is where the Jason Nante logo is going to go. I'm just kind of attaching some greebles. Something I've also done too, you'll see I've even added another layer of greebles. So I had the extra panel. I think I have two panels actually we're not using. And I cracked it right there on accident. But I was kind of doing the same technique of how you can score it and snap it like you do with styrene. This one right here I didn't score very well. That's why you can see all the print layers, like the jaggedness of it. Kind of looks like when you break fiberglass. But anyway, so that way we're not putting anything to waste. But I still have these oxygen tanks right here I could stick somewhere. But anyway, I need to get sort of adding, I need to add these. You know what, I got an idea. I got an idea, because I just sort of want to 3D layer this up now and build some more depth to it. Otherwise it just looks way too flat. And I can sort of do the same thing on this panel over here too. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut out some of these squares and things right now. Oh, and check this out. So because the Rocinante had the PDCs that popped out, these are basically just like phalanx guns on an aircraft carrier or a ship these days. They are designed to just shoot down incoming like missiles and torpedoes and stuff. So I've got two of these, and they're gonna have rocket launchers on the side too. Those are still printing. I've got to airbrush these up and put them together. But I'm gonna be mounting a couple of these on the side as well. Because obviously we need guns. Lots of guns. This is probably going to end up being a little overkill with the way I'm going to clamp them together, but anyone that builds models knows too much glue is just the right amount of glue. That's it. The carpet tape, I'm sure there's two-sided tape out there, like we could have gotten at Michael's or whatever, that would have been just as good. But we've used this obviously, and it's never lost its like tackiness or like its gooiness or whatever. And it's just holding on little plastic panels. I'm sure there's a better product. It's just what we had. And some of the fun aspects of these builds is seeing what unconventional methods you can come up with just to get something done. Because that's the thing, when it comes to modding and playing around like this, there's not really a right way and a wrong way. Like I did read a comment of this guy that went into all the reasons why the scorch marks are just physically incorrect. Because scorching doesn't happen in space. You know the Expanse isn't real, right? Space is real, but guess what? Until we go up there and start actually laser blasting stuff, we're not gonna know how it really looks. It's all physics and theory, right? Please comment about how I'm doing all of the physics wrong, because it helps boost the video. And then more people can see me do it wrong. I'll take this fan back off. This fan was never intended to stay on full time anyway, because I still have to mount the radiator and stuff to it. But now that I'm almost done with all of the texturing and painting effects on here, I'll be able to mount this down with the rad soon. In fact, I might get farther along today than I thought. What? Oh my gosh. If this build takes a month from beginning to end, because I did do the very first part where I cut the metal and stuff a month ago, there'll still be one of Jay's fastest builds ever when it comes to custom work, right? You can't rush art. So the link fans come with these little plugs, which technically are about connecting the fans together, but by sticking that in there, now I can airbrush fade this, make it grimy like the rest, and it won't destroy the contacts by covering it in paint. Nick is like, we need a bright colored stripe in this thing. Like when the Rocinante was disguised as a gas freighter, it had like an orange panel and stuff on there. When it was the MCRN ship, it was black with orange. Clearly I've done the two-tone, as you can see here. Like I'm debating doing a pinstripe in between these two. So color-wise, we have red, which could work. We've got orange, which is very bright. We've got yellow, which could work too. And then we've got like a bright neon green, which also wouldn't look bad. So I don't know. I need some help here. Just, oh, and then blue, which would also work and be spacey. Okay, so I just put down my bottles of color there that I used as a palette, and then I think orange. We tried it with the blue, green, yellow, red, orange. I just like the orange. I think the orange is a good contrast between the grays. Yellow was cool too. We liked yellow. Red is a little bit overdone, in my opinion. So orange is what we're going with. All right, so as much as I tried to do the stripe, I couldn't get a very good parallel line. So I've decided I'm just not gonna do the stripe. I'm not 100% against necessarily doing a color accent, even if I just did like a couple lines up here or something, but right now I wanna move forward without getting stuck on that point. I also added some CA glue to these panels here and then clamp them together while, actually it's these panels right here. Because this part was starting to lift a little bit. You can see a little bit of the glue showing. I'll just put a little spray paint over that. But these were starting to kind of lift off a little bit because I didn't have tape right here. So I CA glued that. I just need to make sure I didn't CA glue it down to the side panel real quick. Like to make sure I can still open it, which should be okay, I think.
Did you really? Did you really glue it closed?
I did.
Nick! Go!
As I was doing this, I was like, don't glue the panel closed. We were just watching a compilation of stupid people while we were at lunch. You can see where it was glued. Anyway, that's off now. So I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna add now some CA glue down in there and clamp it while I'm doing other parts. So here's the way the gun turrets turned out that Nick printed. I think there's like 3 or 4 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces technically. So I gotta paint these. So I'm thinking one will go like right there on that side, then on the other side. Probably not even, it'll probably be like offset somewhere else. Because remember on the ships, they were just kind of all over the place. So we just did 2 on this one. And since what I have a lot of what I have left to do is just painting, we'll go ahead and just sort of B-roll montage it up for that aspect, and then we'll come back when it's ready to talk, or I'm ready to talk. And I have glue everywhere now, not glue, but like the tape boogers. All right, whatever, we'll be back. Okay, well, I'm sure you guys are all as shocked as I am that it's done. Okay, yes, just the fact that it's done. Even if it had taken a year, it still would have been like, okay, that's typical for Jay. But I got it done inside of 1 month with more 3D printing than any of us have ever even dreamed of doing. But anyway, as you can see, we've got some stuff set up here. Obviously, we're using the Corsair Link fans, which I already explained why. Phil has done some lighting configuration on here that we're gonna probably kind of tweak a little bit more. There's one other thing I would have loved to have done if I had really thought about it. It's when we reference the photo of what the engines look like, they've got this almost like a white, kind of like a crackling, misty effect coming off. And I think it would have been neat to 3D print in the white clear that we have, a cone that fits within here that has that jaggedy, like fiery looking bit to it, that would have just picked up the lighting from the fan, and then it would have looked like fire. And we could still do that, but there's no point in extending this any longer than it already is, because I'm happy with the way the case mod has turned out. As you can see, we added the PDCs, and Nick added some rocket launchers to that. My intake here for the power supply works perfect, because as you can see, the screws are right there, needed to mount it down. And so the magnet mod works perfectly on there. Let's talk about the front. Phil has used his skills with doing some artwork to turn the Rocinante into the Jacinante, and then he printed this out on a stencil from our Cricut, and then I transferred it onto here and painted it. And just like when we did our Imperial build, you cannot scratch this off if you tried. In fact, I tried to do my hairspray mod where I could chip it a little bit, but I didn't use enough hairspray, so it will not come off. Like, I can't. So we just ended up fading it by adding a little bit more gray paint on top with a very light layer. But anyway, you can see the front panels are on there. Here's the other PDC on this side. Here is our fan, which I moved to the exterior of the case, which is now a full-size fan blowing air in. Here is the other flow through. And it's funny too, like if you put your hand right here, you can actually feel the air from the graphics card coming all the way through. Because remember, those 120s on the other end are blowing directly on the graphics card. Here is our damage effect, which as you can see, we used the header on the motherboard to put, I basically made a ring of light. So I took an ARGB strip and then just hot glued it in a circle around the hole. And I was planning on airbrushing the graphics card, but the thing is, the rear of the core lines up with the hole, which is probably good if the whole idea about why they put a hole on the back side of the motherboard to allow some of that CPU radiant heat to come out, I guess you would have to say this would do the same thing. Maybe it's just because it's a 40 series and the 12 volt high power just blew a hole right out the side of it. There's your lore right there. But because the core lines up with the hole, the silver and all the SMDs and stuff pick up that light, which Phil has programmed kind of like a sort of a starry night between red and orange to look like fire. That's how that effect is happening. And because the rest of it's black with just a little bit of gold, you can't see it through the holes. There was no point in painting the graphics card, which would have been irreversible. So I just left it the way it was. Let's see, moving forward, what else can I talk about here? Not a whole lot other than we learned a lot on this, and getting this back on is always a pain in the butt. The top is still my favorite part. Nick came up with this design on his own, these louvers. These are functional vents because we wanted the top of the case to retain its functionality of air being pushed in on the graphics card. Part of the axial fans blow air out the exhaust of the graphics card, and that's right here on the top. So if you look in the rear, you can see the vents are still fully functional. And you can feel the air coming out, especially when these fans ramp up. And then I just sort of painted the back to kind of match. I didn't paint any of the components, as you can see. But now, no matter what angle you look at this build, you can see that the theme just sort of follows it around. But it turned out really, really well. Now let's talk about temperatures and stuff. The GPU temps, as you might expect, are pretty phenomenal. I mean, we've got two high pressure, high RPM fans that are set to balanced mode right now in iQ, blowing fresh air directly on the graphics card. That performs about as well as you would expect. The one thing I want to talk about though is the CPU temps. In fact, I'll just go and show you GPU temps. So the card is currently idling at 29. Remember, this is a 4080, not a 4090. It's a 4080 ProArt. The ProArt comes with this particular Tiki build from Falcon Northwest because it's the only 40 series graphics card 4080 and up that would fit in here because it's more of a standard size card. You can see the fan. Look, the fans are actually off on the GPU right now. They're idle, or not even idle, it's off. So that cooling is just from these fans blowing directly on it. Anyway, it'll max out at around 70 or so. which is like really, really good. Now the thing is, and Falcon had reached out to me too to make sure I had thought of this, and I had. When it comes to the 120 AIO as an intake, it has a lot of pressure to overcome if I'm blasting these 120s as an intake. So two 120s pushing air in, any air not exhausting out the vents, which may or may not end up being an issue later on. We'll just have to do our full testing, which is gonna actually be the next video, which is about cooling, not about the build so much, but about SFF cooling and some of the stuff I'm gonna try out. If this RPM can't overmatch, or at least match the amount of pressure coming through this chassis, then we're gonna have an inefficiency here with our AIO. Remember, I have a 120 AIO. I am asking a lot of an Asetek 120 AIO to keep a 7800X3D cool in any sort of CPU intensive task. When it comes to graphics though, as you can see, we're hovering at like 65C right now. And these fans are not even going all that fast. And crazy enough, if I had like a thermal camera, you would see there is a fair amount of heat radiating out of, Phil, put your hand right here. Like touch it.
Yeah, it's realistic fire now.
It's working as intended. Let's see what happens now with the CPU. And that's a slightly different story. Score-wise, it's landing where it was before I did any of the mods. But I think there's room for improvement. And the temperatures are up a little bit. And there's a few reasons for that. I think one, this grill right here, its porosity is not great because this is louvered at an angle. So one of the things that we're gonna be testing in the next video for temperatures is I made a spacer to move it away from the blades a little bit to see if we can't get a little bit of a bigger cushion of air right in front of the blades. It'll help with acoustics. It'll also help with a little bit of extra airflow. Two, I'm probably gonna go ahead and cut out the vent on the inside. So remember, there is still the grill material on one side, and then I've got this vent on the other. So although I put a bigger fan in here, I might not have actually created a better situation by having the little bit of resistance on one side and probably a fair amount of resistance here. If this ends up being a big problem, which means I'll try by removing the grill entirely as well. If we see a big improvement in temps, we'll just redesign this, reprint it, repaint it, put it on there. Our cores are in the low 80 or high 70s, low 80s with the package at 86. Now, I believe the package before, and you can hear the fan is ramped up, it's doing its job, but I definitely feel like it's not flowing as well as it could. And I do think a lot of that has to do with the design of this grate. So we're gonna have to play with this, I think. We're still hitting 4824 megahertz, 4800 megahertz. This is all core, by the way. And our package is at 85.9, and all of our cores, our CCDs at 75, and our cores are between 81 and the low, and there's a 17,574. So we lost a little bit because we were right around 18,000. So I do think that, oh, and by the way, I've got IQ and Aura and all that running, so they're gonna account for some of the score dip. But I do think we can do a better job here, both acoustically and temperature-wise, and that will be in a separate video because it's just gonna be fun learning about some airflow techniques. It's not gonna be, it has nothing to do with like necessarily the case mod. This is now just airflow physics, and I wanna play around with that. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed the Expanse themed build. There's one aspect to this I wasn't able to incorporate that I want to try later, but I did not want to hold up the video anymore. That's going to be getting some proto-molecule on here. Now my idea was to backlight some like hot glue drips and stuff to make it look like the glowing proto-molecule, because remember in the movie / TV show books, it's mostly black with a lot of like glowing blue, like luminescence to it. It's actually very difficult to get that technique the way I want. Part of the problem is the fact that this Asus motherboard that's in here, which is a B650E, I think it's B650E, I think it's the E, whatever. It's a B650. It has one ARGB header, Gen 2 RGB by the way, and a single 12 volt header. Now almost all devices these days are 5 volt ARGB. Now it's a Gen 2 device, which means the header could split the signal between multiple Gen 2 devices and individually control them. The problem is none of my devices are Gen 2, and when I look them up online, there's kind of a limited selection. So it's sort of like this is on the cusp of a new generation of RGB that none of my stuff that I have works with. So I opted to, fortunately, be saved by the fact that I'm using IQ for the fans because it's independent on lighting, and then I used that header for the fire effects, which to me was more important than the proto-molecule, and I'll figure that out later. Anyway, hope you guys have enjoyed this build. I hope it's given you some ideas, maybe for your own case mods. And you guys know I love to take my model building techniques and utilize them in PCs when possible. And a lot of you guys said this was very refreshing content. You guys enjoyed seeing it. It was different than what you're used to seeing in the tech space. It's been a long time since we've done a case mod, so there you go. It's also the first time we've utilized 3D printing in it, which would not have been possible without our 3D printers. So also too, Nick did a great job at modeling a lot of this, taking my ideas and turning it into an actual physical, tangible thing. All three of us played a huge part in making this build what it is. So this was a huge team effort, not just like, look at what Jay can do. So, I mean, with the exception of putting it together, painting it, everything else was a team effort. So thanks for watching, guys. Give this video a like if you appreciated it. There was a lot of time and effort that went into this, and I would love to do more stuff like this because it's just fun to let the brain juices leak out my ear. The creative juices, whatever. I have protomolecule in my head, probably. No, that's just paint fumes.